I'm Sharon Higgins, and I live in Oakland, California, and I blog about education issues and charter schools. I thought that there was a lot, I knew there was a lot of propaganda and misinformation, and there is a whole force that is promoting charter schools, and there was not much to counter it. So I had the time, and I decided I was going to investigate them and start a blog and do what I could.
And what's the name of your blog?
I have three, actually. The main one is, the first one was Perimeter Primate, and then I pursued the Broad Foundation for a while and did, what I do is I just do my research, and then I put my research on my blogs, so it's a place for the public to read what I've discovered. So that was called the Broad Report, and then I did Charter School Scandals, and that's my main blog right now.
And what was going on in Oakland with charter schools that you were unhappy about?
Well, we had charter schools start in the 1990s, and then we had a state takeover, and we had the California Department of Education, the state superintendent, sent us state administrators who had been trained by the Broad Foundation in their Broad Superintendent's Academy. And we had a series of 3 of those. And when they came in, they just started, to me, just ripping up the district, at bringing in more and more charter schools, closing down schools. The first one had to have a bodyguard because he upset the community so much. I just said, this isn't right. And with more and more charter schools coming up, my neighborhood school was losing enrollment, and so I just thought that there were so many lies associated with these charter schools, of them being superior, and without looking at other factors that were contributing to that. Primarily in the case of the one that I knew about were compliance contracts that they would force students and parents to sign. And if you're going to require a signature of compliance contracts, that's a whole different type of school.
What is a compliance contract?
It says you'll agree to certain behavioral things. You're going to, if you don't come to school often enough, you're at risk of being kicked out. If you don't produce high enough grades, or you have discipline issues, you're at risk of being kicked out. If the parents don't do X, Y, Z, if students don't do A, B, C, the family is at risk of being kicked out of the charter school. So, it's not a fair field, when you're comparing the test scores of schools like that, and that's the only thing that we go by now is a school's test scores, whether it's a good school or not. If you're comparing those test scores to test scores of a school that's taking all students, even the ones whose parents are unable to fulfill the requirements of a compliance contract, or students of the same type, it's a different type of student body.
A lot of parents, working class parents, working in many jobs, they have trouble, taking care of their children. They wouldn't be able to sign this thing, would they? It's because of their economic situation.
They have limitations, yes. Sometimes kids have to stay home and take care of their siblings. There are just all types of reasons why people who are able to sign compliance contracts, why their children might produce higher test scores than parents who cannot. You can't take physician, for instance, and have a physician have an entire clientele of patients who will only comply with each of the prescriptives that the doctor will give. That's going to, if he could get rid of all of his patients that were non-compliant, then that's just going to narrow down the type of patients he's going to have. So his outcomes, his whole sort of overall outcome might be, it's going to be better than a doctor who can't require that of his patients. I made connections with, first of all, early on, I made connections with people all over the country, from doing research and people finding my blog and writing to me, and I found that the whole the internet and the online world was a great place to link up with people. I linked up with Diane Ravitch that way. She contacted me because I had left comments on one of her blogs. Mm-hmm. I made connections with parents in New York City. Parents in Seattle and North Carolina found out about my work and contacted me. And so that was early on, more with the perimeter primate. and with the Broad Report. And then once I started doing charter school scandals, it opened up this whole other world.
And how did you find out about Gulen?
Well, I decided that since these moneyed, powerful entities that are pushing charter schools and school privatization, there was really nothing to counter that. There was very little. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to make a blog, and it's going to be called Charter School Scandals, and I'm just going to compile all the stories that aren't being told about charter schools that I can find in one place, so people can go to it. And so I started my blog and started Googling charter school stories, charter school embezzlement, charter school problems, charter school complaints, and then I would get these Google results and just do research from there. Hours and hours and hours of time, which is, fortunately something I have to put into and I'm fairly good at. So.
And when did you first learn about Gulen?
Quite early on. Was an article that popped up about a charter school in Salt Lake City, and one of the parents who had sat on the board of that charter, who had felt some things were going on at that school. It's called Beehive Science and Technology Academy. And he was concerned about things that were going on and started looking around, and he found out about the Gulen movement and that the people from this group were starting schools around the world, and he felt like there was an association between that group and the charter school that he was sitting on the board. When he raised the issue, apparently the other board members got irate with him, and he was very alienated, he got very alienated, and he ended up leaving and pulling his kids out. So anyway, that was one story I encountered, and then from reading that article, I think reading the comments, I eventually got led to another story. That was going on in late 2009, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And the charter school scandals started in May 2010, so I sort of found that story, and then I found another story from that about a charter school in Arizona, same thing, a Turkish-operated charter school where there were suspicions that there were associations with this Turkish religious group. And then I remember thinking to myself, I said, this is odd. We've got Turkish charter school in Salt Lake City, we've got a Turkish charter school in Tucson, Arizona, and Turkish-run charter school. And then I thought, gosh, there's a charter school in Oakland that I remember looking at the board listing and not recognizing the nationality of any of those names. And that had been a few years before. So what I did is I went back to that school. The one in Arizona is Sonoran Science Academy in Tucson. They have several schools in Arizona. So I went back to the one in Oakland, which is Bay Area Technology School, and it goes by the name Baytech, and looked at the board member listing, and these were all Turkish individuals. And I thought, this is really odd. So I started doing some more research and realized that there was this. So this is in like May of 2010. I realized there were more things about this. And it's been taking a while to sort out kind of the correct information from the incorrect information and kind of piece it together. So it's been a full 2 years since I've been pursuing this.
So who's who? But you found it strange that all these Turkish people are starting these schools up.
Yeah, that sounds... Yeah, what are the odds of that? One thing that bothered me a lot is that they deny an association. However, if you start to look at the patterns that are going on at these schools, you can see that they're all common. There's this constellation of features that each of them has in common, and that's how you put it together. This is a matter of circumstantial evidence, which, as I understand, which I learned, has equal weight as to somebody having direct evidence and saying yes. In fact, you don't need to have the operators of these charter schools saying that, yes, I am a member of the Gulen movement and I am running Gulen charter schools because they're the Gulen movement's charter schools. You don't need that. That would, I suppose, be direct evidence. All you have to do is build a body of indirect evidence and circumstantial evidence, and that has equal weight in a court of law. And that's what's going on with these schools. They're not admitting that they're connected. They'll do it in some real peripheral. Well, we might be inspired, some of us here, but that's not what's going on.
So what are the things that indicate that this is a Gulen school?
These schools, and there are now, we've identified 135 of these schools. It's the largest network in the country. It's larger than KIPP. I think KIPP has, if my number is right, it's 101.
And KIPP is run by the Gap owners?
KIPP was founded by
John Fisher.
Right,
Fisher and,
right. But it's a
Princeton
large
Science
CMO, and it's out of Texas, and it's one of these no excuses charter schools that gets a lot of attention in the media. And so that is the largest official network. And so but larger than that are these Gulen movement operated charter schools. They are founded by people with advanced degrees who have come to this country, who are often working in academia or in business, a lot in the sciences. They're Turkish. Usually, well, they're all men, almost all men, and they have, what was I going to say? They have advanced degrees usually in science, often in sciences, computer specialties, and various physical sciences, it turns out. So anyway, that or they could be Turkic. In other words, they're from a Central Asian country. Okay, almost, so we'll say Turkish or with some minor amount being Turkic. So you find that that's the consistent board member. And they all want to start their charter schools with a focus in math and science because they want to help American kids. That's what they say.
They're here to help.
They're here to help. That's how they frame it on their charter school applications or when they're interviewed in newspaper reports. The other thing that's really interesting is that, and I haven't been able to access all of their charter school applications, but never, ever in any of the charter school applications will there be mention of the fact that Turkish is going to be presented as one of the languages. It's oftentimes Spanish and Turkish are the two foreign languages that are offered at these schools. Sometimes Turkish is offered as an after-school program. It's always offered at these schools. It's never mentioned as one of the foreign languages. And the other thing that is not mentioned is the heavy cultural emphasis that's going to happen at these schools in terms of introducing the kids to Turkish culture. There will be Turkish dance folk classes. There will be Turkish cooking classes for the parents. There will be Ebru. It's a water marbling art form classes after school. It's just like they just a side thing at these schools, but it's always present, is the heavy Turkish cultural instruction. Accompanied with that is offering the families and students trips to Turkey. These are guided trips to Turkey. All these schools take their kids on these guided trips to Turkey, and at a very low rate, so it's an enticement. And I think that some of the times what they do is they offer the higher performing students even more discount to go on these trips. And these are propaganda trips. And the other thing that the kids do is they compete in what are called Turkish Olympiads, Turkish Olympics, Turkish language contests. It depends on where you are. And these contests are hosted by organizations that are confirmed Gulenist organizations. Okay? And they'll be taken down to festivals. The kids in California, and all the kids actually in the western region, the Gulenists have split our country up into 6 regions. So all the kids in the western region, they're under a sort of a main organization that provides services to all the charter schools in those states. It operates out of Southern California. It's called the Accord Institute. So all of the schools under the Accord Institute those students will be taken to the Anatolian festival, which they're told is a ancient heritage festival by the parents, half the parents don't, and so they're taken down there on buses. I went to one of those last October, and the parking lot was packed with school buses, and the place was swarming with students both on Thursday and Friday. All of them, almost all of them. There were some from a few other private schools, but almost all the kids were from the California Magnolia schools and from other outlying schools in the western region.
And what happened at this thing?
The kids wander around and enjoy Turkish culture. It's a cultural festival, a lot like you might go to a Greek festival or something like that. The kids are given Turkish flags to wave, and they'll dance because they've all been trained to dance at their school. So they might, they were engaging in dancing, and what's really interesting is once you understand this whole Gulenist kind of network, then you realize that when you're in the Anatolian festival, you look around and all of the banners that are advertising anything are all attached, like the newspapers, the Fountain magazine, which is the premier Gulenist English language magazine. They're all. It's a very narrow world once you realize all these these hallmarks of it. So anyway, yeah, there are 6 regions.
It was disturbing to you that this was going on.
Yeah, what bothers me is the deception in the charter school applications. That this whole charter system is so crazy that you have all these independent school boards or entities all over the country. Sometimes they're colleges. They're all responsible for authorizing charter schools, and none of them are in communication with each other. So they might think it's kind of odd that this school is being presented to them, but they go, okay, well, these guys all have PhDs, so let's go ahead and do it. So you have a school in New York that's like that in some community, and you have a school in North Carolina, you have a school in Louisiana, it's like that. And none of these authorizers are in touch with each other to kind of see that, oh yeah, this is kind of what is different, But so there's deception on the part of the authorizers aren't being told what's going on, what the purpose of these charter schools is or who's behind them. The parents don't know. And that's the thing that bothers me is that if you're a parent and you're looking around for a charter school for your kid and you sign up for this charter school, you deserve to be told that it's being run by a cult-like religious group. You deserve to know that.
How is religion brought into these schools?
Well, I think there's a lot of investigation that needs to go on about, you're saying with charter schools, do they teach religion? Mm-hmm. Typically not. Although there are funny things, like the school in Louisiana, there was some rumor that there was a room for prayer. Mm-hmm. The teachers of that school were taken on a trip to Turkey too, one of these guided propaganda trips to Turkey, and they were given literature about Fethullah Gulen. I've had one teacher wrote to me saying that when they went to their teacher training, it was a new school in New Jersey, that they were told about Gulen. Mm-hmm. in their.
So he is their kind of idol. I mean, he's the founder of this whole movement, this ideology.
Right.
What is this ideology?
We're all still teasing that out. And I think that that's a good thing that, once that this 60 Minutes report gets issued and once word gets out about this, we can have all those conversations. Some people have said, some people look at this movement as it's imperialistic, expanding, imperialistic, more power for Turkey. It's about power and bringing everyone into the fold of this. There have been suggestions that the Gulenists see the secular years of Turkey, of the Republic of Turkey, as a blip. It's a blip, and we're going to go back to some form of Neo-Ottoman Empire, is how it's envisioned. So things are going on, and we don't necessarily know what's going on.
Now, you had some experience with schools in Georgia.
Yeah.
What happened there in Georgia?
Oh, okay. So there's a school called Fulton Science Academy that was founded by the Gulen movement. It's one of their charter schools. Their first charter school was started in Ohio in 1999. So this charter school it opened in 2001 in Alpharetta, Georgia. And it had a renewal 5 years later and was coming up for a renewal again last December. And they've, in addition to that school, they've also started a high school there and then elementary school. So this Fulton Science Academy covers the whole kind of spectrum for K-12. So the Fulton County School Board had observed some very strange kind of administrative decisions, and the ties with the hiring services from this Grace Institute, which is the equivalent for that southeastern region, which consists of schools in Georgia and the Gulen charter schools in Florida and Georgia. They had associations with that. And there's a lot of conflict of interest going on where they weren't looking at other service providers. They were just going with this Grace Institute.
So there was no competitive bidding. They were just going to...
No. In fact, there's an article that was published in the New York Times in June of 2011 about this whole kind of network that goes on of doing favors in the businesses and the school uniforms and sometimes the food that's served at the school. You know, each area has kind of identified and has developed businesses to support the structure of that charter school that also they get to tap into our tax dollars and do what they ever, what they ever want to do.
So public money is being used for this?
It's for themselves. Yeah, it's for themselves.
But there's no requirement for charters to have proper bidding or competitive bidding, or is there oversight?
I don't think there's much oversight.
So they're able to do this.
They're doing it. Yeah, they're doing it.
So in Georgia, they were doing it, and the board there was getting...
Yeah, they were, what was it in Georgia? It was that. It was tied with that. It was tied with going ahead and making plans for building a new school without getting permission from the state in the proper manner. There was a series of problems that were coming up. And even though this is a high-performing charter school, that was people supposedly just loved. It had all the local politicians backing it up, because that's the other thing the Gulenists do, is they target politicians. One researcher called the way that they deal with parents and politicians and local public officials as a strategy of seduction. Okay, they make office visits. They're nice to you. They offer you gifts. They bring you, you can go online, you can find like gobs and gobs of photographs of smiling politicians receiving their gifts of Turkish platters and ceramics. They get gifts to Turkey. So anyway, all this is this political cover that gets developed to help support this charter school. So anyway, all the politicians came forward, no, don't close Fulton Science Academy. But the school board unanimously, along with the superintendent's recommendation, they just decided to not renew the charter. So, of course, everybody's all upset. This was last December 2011. Everyone's upset. They go to the State Board of Education in Georgia, and the charter school director does his research, and the more he digs, there's a letter that recently came out where he's responding to parents. The more he dug, the worse it was. $6 million apparently is missing from the bond that this school received. They can't not locate what it was being used for.
So public money is disappearing.
Yeah.
By these Gulen schools.
Yeah.
And this was why they rejected allowing them to be certified.
Yeah. So that school is now claiming it's going to turn private, which the Gulen movement should have done all along. All around the world, basically, their schools are private, and they usually educate the children of the elite, whether it's in Albania or in Ethiopia or anywhere, Indonesia, anywhere they go. Their schools have good reputations, and they draw the children of the elite. They have poor students who come. If they test high enough, the poor students can come in, and their tuition is paid for with scholarships that's funded by members of this movement who donate their money. It's spelled HIMMET, HIMET, because they're donating their money to the movement that's going to be used for the cause.
So was this a religious cult?
So,
a political religious cult?
I think it's a cult. It seems like a cult to me. I think you need a person who's a cult expert, but the way they draw in, to determine whether something is a religion or something is a cult, it rings like a cult to me from the reading I've done. They've got this charismatic leader that everyone is devoted to.
But he doesn't speak out publicly. I mean, he's
no, he hides.
In interviews, and he won't give interviews.
Yeah, he doesn't
speak out. What is the problem?
No, I don't know. He's hiding in the Poconos. He's on a compound, which used to be a kids' summer camp. When he left Turkey, when he was about to be arrested, he came here. And he's been living on this compound ever since. Supposedly he's been to the Mayo Clinic. He recently had cataract surgery in Philadelphia, but he does some sort of broadcasting on a website, and I don't know if they're in Turkish, so I don't know what his regular routine is for that.
So he was going to be arrested in Turkey?
Yeah, he was. At one point early on, he's about 70 years old now. And he, to me, it's somewhat like the rise of the religious right in this country, in that he started getting a group of followers in the late 60s, early 70s, and he would go to different mosques and give these sermons, and then his followers started to produce pamphlets and recordings so people could listen to his sermons, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. He just has amassed these followers. And at one point he was jailed for relating to issues, I guess, about, fears about him trying to overthrow the secular state of Turkey. Early on.
He believes in a religious state.
Yeah, I think so. These are pious, religious, conservative individuals. In fact, they have worked with members of the creationist Christian groups here to develop creationist materials together. They've worked in tandem. So that to me that it's this religious conservatism that is just kind of this counterpart of some of the religious conservatism we've seen rise up in here over the last few decades. But he's just got this whole group of followers. Now, in the late 1990s, he supposedly gave this sermon where he advised his followers to travel in the arteries of the system and not be detected. And there's this whole stay inside. A chick can't develop if it hatches outside its egg too quickly. It needs to stay inside till it's time to hatch. There's all this stuff that was coming out. So around that time, he fled to the United States, saying he needed medical care. Well, he supposedly has diabetes and heart problems. Well, to me, I'm a former nurse. A lot of people have diabetes and heart problems. This is not something that you need to come to the United States for treatment for, especially, I would imagine Istanbul probably has pretty good hospitals there. Somebody who has money could get their medical care, right? I don't believe that. So anyway, yeah, he came here. They actually tried him in absentia, and there was this big argument whether this recording where he's talking about traveling in the arteries of the system unnoticed till you get to the center was doctored. Some people say it was, some people say it wasn't. Well, in the long run, he was tried and found, wasn't found guilty. So, but then there's all this funny business. Like he came here and he had his visa, but then he wanted to apply for a green card, and the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Immigration did not want to issue him a green card. They denied it. His lawyers appealed, He got letters from a number of individuals. Some are members of the Gulen movement here. Others are former members of the CIA. Morton Abramowitz, who was a diplomat for Turkey, wrote letters of recommendation about how wonderful Gulen is, and the judge granted him his appeal, and he got his green card. So that was like, I think, in 2008, 2006, and he's just been in Pennsylvania ever since.
And there's some reports that his schools in Kazakhstan, one of the states, was closed down with charges that it was they were CIA spying.
There is that sort of that's floating out there, is this tie. Well, the timing is just perfect for all of this going for the Gulen movement, because as he's rising in power and he's getting more and more of his followers, and he's got his schools going on in Turkey, these private schools, then what happens is the Soviet Union dissolves. Okay? So you've got this power void, and you've got all of these Central Asian states that are formerly Turkic countries, and the first thing that the Gulen movement does is it goes into Central Asia and starts establishing schools. So there are theories out there that the CIA palled up with Gulen and his charter school and his educators as they went to Central Asia to establish schools, and that CIA agents were accompanying these schools so that they could kind of get into former USSR territory. Okay, so there's a really interesting film about Turkmenistan and some of these like Turkish businessmen who palled up with the dictator of Turkmenistan, who's now deceased, who was just this kind of crazy dictator. And so anyway, there's a really good book about film about that called Shadow of the Holy Book that kind of talks about that. So some high-ranking members of the Gulen movement who ended up in this country also were given awards by this dictator of Turkmenistan. So there's just a lot going. Central Asia is really, really important, and understanding what's going on in Central Asia, not just like strategically, it's in terms of the resources there and the access to oil and the pipelines and the natural gas and everything there. It's got to be tied up with all of this.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you surprised or shocked that the U.S. government, which has been kind of repressing Arab Americans and Muslims, would be helping to support a Muslim-type religious organization to spread out throughout the United States to recruit people and to children and that kind of thing? Did that surprise you?
I just still need to hear the rest of that story. There's a lot that we need to find out. There's a lot that's been going on that the American public has not been told about. There are those theories. Some people say that the reason that there's that whole issue of that they've picked Gulen because he's the good Muslim, that this Sufi type of Islam that he is promoting is somehow going to be better than other types of Muslim. They're worried about the terrorists. There's no clear, strong terrorist link with the Gulen movement that we've seen yet. I mean, this is a lot. Some of this stuff just is not my expertise. Mm-hmm. It needs to be. All needs to be explored by a lot of people who but people don't know. Texas has the largest number of charter schools. Although Ohio has the oldest charter school, started in 1999. I think it was maybe the year following they started charter schools in Texas, and they have expanded rapidly. Houston is a node of Gulenist activity in this country. Houston is a node. Chicago is a node. A lot comes out of a lot of the publications and sort of operations work are out of Clifton, New Jersey.
So
that's kind of how it works.
Operation.
Yeah, they do. They're all over the place. They're everywhere. They're almost everywhere. Well, they're in 26 states, and they've made more attempts. They've made attempts for charter schools in other states, and they're active. In Wyoming, they're giving legislators luncheons and offering them trips to Turkey. They go everywhere, and like I say, they've divided the country up into regions, and it's all. They'll say that they're not connected, but they are definitely connected. There are too many things in common with their operations and with the nature of their operations.
What does this say about privatization of education? Are these charters a threat? I mean, your experience in Oakland is that they are very damaging to public education. Do you see these charters as a threat to basic protection of public education?
Of course, yeah. It's breaking it down. It's balkanizing it. You have all these little specialty charter schools. In fact, there was an article recently that came out that was that a person was justifying their Hebrew charter school, saying, well, we have Turkish charter schools now, so we're going to have like all these little subgroups of people educating subgroups of kids, tapping into tax dollars. There's no sort of common community civic interest in sort of the well-being of people mixing and being exposed to other ideas. I don't know what's going to go on in these charter schools. You don't know what's going on, and then there's no way you can have adequate oversight of what's going on in each of these charter schools.
Why is the Obama administration and Secretary of Education Arne Duncan pushing charter schools and this basically privatization of education?
Well, I guess because they don't value public education. They don't value the history of public education in this country. Neither of them went to public schools for any amount of time. I don't think they value I don't think they value the American community on the local level. I think that maybe, then there's the whole part that's associated with the money and all the money that this is public education. There's a lot of money going to public education, and these groups want to tap into it, whether it's in increased testing or curriculum, this whole thing with Pearson that's starting to come out and how dirty that is.
What is Pearson doing?
Oh, Pearson does a lot of the testing materials and other education things, and they are they're pushing for just more and more testing, more association with judging schools on their test scores.
So it's a business.
It's a business. It's a business because the more tests they can give, the more money Pearson can make. And this is also kind of tied in with to me, Bill Gates and his interest in this online learning. Now they want, more and more kids are, what school consists of is sitting in front of a computer. Whether it's at home, you have cyber schools. It's not communicating with other people, mixing with other people, learning how to do teamwork. It's like staying in front of a computer screen and supposedly completing your schoolwork and learning what you need to know in life by doing that. Does
it frighten you that this is where education is
I'm
going?
totally freaked out. I'm totally freaked out by what's happening. It's like these people, it's like this force, this huge, powerful force has just taken this, and they're strangling public education so they see something completely different in this country, which is not going to be better. It's going to be, to me it's going to be more repressive, and they're going to be making money, and people are not going to be able to be learning the things they need to know. Yeah, I'm completely freaked out. Local communities need to be able to connect with each other. And one way that families can do that is through their local public schools. And when they are zipping around the city and, then coming home and closing their door and hiding inside. There's not a fabric that's being built. There's a fabric that needs to exist in communities for them to be healthy. And the whole fabric of this country is just fraying to pieces. It's fraying. It's going away.
That's why you're doing your journal, to get that information out.
But I can, yeah. There's something very wrong with what's going on right now, to me, in my gut, my instinct, and I have good instincts, so I feel just fine about saying that. So I do.